So I'm going to be reading a little bit more of Angels Don't Know Karate. So we took a little bit of a break for our spring break. So we're going to jump right back into it. So in the last chapter, Melody said that she was going to become friends with mean Mr. Mason. Here we go. Chapter 9 is called Angel Cookies. It looks as if Huey is the one who needs a friend, Eddie said, motioning across the street. Ben and Huey were both standing in the soccer field. At least Ben was standing. Huey was sitting on the frozen ground staring up at Ben. Is Ben picking on poor Huey? Liza asked. I think Ben is using Huey for karate practice, Howie told them. Ben kicked his foot all around Huey. Ki-ya! Ben yelled, doing karate chops in the air over Huey's head. We better help, Melody said, before one of those karate chops hurts Huey. If we go over there, Eddie told her, Ben will just use us for target practice, and I, for one, don't feel like getting broken in two like one of those stacks of wood at the mall. We have to do something, Liza said. After all, he can't chop us all to pieces. Eddie opened his mouth to argue when the kids saw Ben lift his hand high above Huey's head. Ben's hand came down hard in a karate chop. No! Liza screamed. But Ben's hand didn't hit Huey. A white-gloved hand caught Ben's wrist like a steel trap. The white hand lifted Ben off the ground as if it were floating. It's Angela Michaels, Melody said. She saved Huey. The kids watched with their mouths hanging open as Miss Michaels held up Ben and talked to him. Her voice drifted across the street and the kids could hear some of her words. Karate, she said, is not for bullying the weaker. The strong among us must protect the weaker. Do you understand this? Ben nodded, and Miss Michaels lowered him to the ground. Now, she said, go help your friend. Ben ran over to Huey and helped him off the ground. Ben even dusted the snow off Huey's pants before Huey ran home. See, Melody whispered, she does have special powers. She's an angel, and she wants us to make friends. And we're going to start with Mr. Mason. We're not going to do anything with Mr. Mason yet, Eddie told Melody. He held up a free karate lesson coupon. First, we'll check out Miss Michaels at the karate studio. Then you'll see she's no angel. Melody nodded. Fine, but then we'll be nice to Mr. Mason. Eddie shook his head. That's like being nice to the abominable snowman himself. Come on, let's hurry before we lose Miss Michaels. Melody, Liza, Howie, and Eddie followed Miss Michaels down Delaware Boulevard, then followed her as she turned right onto Main Street and then left onto Forest Lane. She's heading for Brubaker's Dance and Gym Emporium, Liza whispered. Either that or the cemetery, Eddie said. Melody held her breath when Miss Michaels paused in front of the cemetery and lifted her hand. I bet she's waving to all her friends, Eddie giggled. Eddie, stop, Liza warned. Maybe angels really do help us. All I want Miss Michaels to help me with is karate, Eddie said. Howie pointed to the Brubaker's Dance and Gym Emporium. There she is, he said. Miss Michaels was already going in the door. The four kids raced to catch up. They stopped when they were inside the dark building. This place is creepy, Melody said, looking around the gloomy hallway. Not that white room, Liza said. The four kids stared at a bright white room off to the side of the dark hallway. A gold band ran around the top of the room, and gold mats covered the walls. Gold and blue punching bags hung in one corner. 5 figures, all dressed in white, stood at the far end of the room. Oh my gosh, Melody squealed. It's a whole flock of angels. All right, we're going to read chapter 10. So chapter 10 is, Ma'am, yes, ma'am. The 5 figures shouted loudly, Ma'am, yes, ma'am. I thought angels were quiet, Eddie teased. These obviously flunked peacefulness. They aren't angels, Howie said. They're Miss Michaels' students. Miss Michaels stepped out from behind the white-clad students and motioned to Howie, Melody, Liza, and Eddie. Welcome, she said. Please take off your shoes and slip on those white uniforms hanging on the wall. The kids followed directions and bounced over to Miss Michaels. They stood in line facing her. Karate, Miss Michaels said, is full of discipline. To be an expert, You must have control of your mind and body. Miss Michaels paused, and the 5 white-clad students yelled, "Ma'am, yes, ma'am." Eddie giggled. "Are we in the army?" Miss Michaels looked at Eddie and said, "We will begin with jumping jacks." "Great," Eddie said. The 4 kids had no problem with the first 10 jumping jacks, or the first 20. But by number 30, Liza was barely keeping up, and even Eddie was slowing down. By number 40, Melody, Liza, and Howie had stopped and were panting. Eddie was determined not to quit. But when Miss Michaels stopped at 50, he was red-faced. He was too out of breath to even crack a joke. Miss Michaels smiled and demonstrated a side kick, which is what you just saw her doing. Then each student had a chance to practice. Liza fell down and Eddie giggled. Miss Michaels looked at Eddie and said, 20 sit-ups. Ready? Begin. By the time they had done the sit-ups, the kids were so tired they were sprawled on the floor. Miss Michaels demonstrated a front kick and then called for them to line up again. "I think I'm dead," Eddie said as he peeled himself off the floor. Miss Michaels waited until everyone was standing up in a straight line. Then she spoke in a clear, musical voice. "Be proud of yourself and remember to watch out for others. Karate is control. Be in control of yourself, not others." Then Miss Michaels bowed and the white-clad students bowed to her. "Ma'am, yes, ma'am," they yelled. Eddie, Melody, Liza, and Howie slowly changed back into their clothes. They made their way to the door and put on their shoes and coats. "I've never been so sore," Liza complained. "See," Eddie told Melody, "Miss Michaels isn't an angel. She's really an army drill sergeant in disguise." Melody stood up straight. "Weren't you paying attention? She's an angel, and she told us to watch out for others. And we'll start with Mr. Mason." All right, so that was the end of chapter 10. I hope you guys enjoyed it.